Martha Reynolds had always believed that trust was the foundation of everything: business, family, love. And if there was one person she trusted more than anyone, it was her daughter, Lisa. Now, as she sat in a dimly lit cafe, a half-empty cup of coffee turning cold beside her, she stared at the headline flashing on her phone screen. Lisa Reynolds named CEO of Reynolds & Company, a new era for skincare innovation. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled down. There it was, printed in black and white, her own daughter, the little girl she had once rocked to sleep, the young woman she had mentored, now standing at the helm of the company Martha had built from scratch. A company that, just a few weeks ago, had still been hers. Her stomach twisted. She knew what was coming, but she needed to see it with her own eyes. She forced herself to read the article. Lisa was being praised for her bold vision, her modern leadership. They called her a breath of fresh air for the brand. Not a single mention of Martha. Not a word about the woman who had spent 20 years perfecting the formulas, handpicking the ingredients, earning the trust of customers who swore by her products. It was as if she had never existed. A fresh wave of nausea hit as she scrolled further. A direct quote from Lisa. Reynolds & Company is entering a new chapter, one that embraces innovation, efficiency, and a forward-thinking approach. My goal is to take this brand beyond tradition and into the future. Martha set the phone down carefully, her breath coming in shallow bursts. The meaning behind Lisa's words was clear. Tradition. That was Martha. The past. That was Martha. Discarded. That was Martha. Her hands clenched into fists. It wasn't just the business. It was the betrayal. The cold calculation of it all. Lisa had waited until the moment was right, until Martha was vulnerable, trusting. She had signed over temporary legal rights to Lisa, thinking she was securing their legacy, never imagining that the contract had been rewritten in ways she hadn't even noticed. Her own signature, used against her. Her mind reeled back to that last conversation in the office, just a few weeks before. "Mom, you need to rest. You've worked too hard for too long. Let me take some of the weight off your shoulders. I trust you, Lisa." The memory felt like a knife twisting in her gut. A waitress passed by, offering a polite smile, but Martha barely noticed. Her world had already shifted. She had lost everything. And worst of all, it had been taken by the one person she had never thought would hurt her. Martha didn't remember leaving the cafe. One moment, she was staring at the betrayal flashing across her phone screen. The next, she was outside, the cold evening air stinging her skin, her breath visible in the dim street lights. She walked, aimlessly at first, then with purpose. By the time she reached her brownstone, her mind was racing, emotions tangled in knots so tight she wasn't sure where rage ended and heartbreak began. Inside, the house felt hollow. The walls, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt suffocating. She had built this home just like she had built Reynolds & Company, brick by brick, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice. And now, just like that, both had been ripped from her hands. The answering machine blinked with messages. She pressed play. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk." Lisa's voice. Calm. Steady. Like this was just a misunderstanding. Martha clenched her jaw and deleted the message. The next one clicked in. A different voice. "Martha, it's Sarah. I just heard the news. I don't even know what to say. Call me, okay?" Sarah Holden. Her closest friend, her first investor, the woman who had believed in her when no one else did. Martha hesitated, then grabbed her coat again. Sitting alone in her grief wasn't going to fix anything. She drove straight to Sarah's townhouse. When the door opened, Sarah took one look at her and pulled her inside. "I should have seen it coming," Martha admitted, slumping onto the couch, her voice brittle. She was always ambitious. She exhaled sharply, pressing her palms together. "I thought that was a good thing." Sarah sat across from her, eyes sharp with anger. "Ambition is one thing. Stabbing your own mother in the back is another. Martha let out a dry, humorless laugh. The irony is, I taught her everything she knows about business. Negotiation, branding, scaling. Every deal she's ever closed, I gave her the foundation for it. She shook her head. And I never saw it coming. Sarah sighed. What are you going to do? Martha stared at the floor. What could she do? The company was gone. The betrayal had already happened. And if the press releases were any indication, Lisa wasn't planning to look back. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know who I am without that company. Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. You're Martha Reynolds. You built Reynolds and Company from nothing once. That means you can do it again. Martha wanted to believe that. But right now, all she felt was empty. She pulled her hand away gently and forced a tight smile. I appreciate you, Sarah. I do. But I don't think I have the strength to start over. Sarah studied her for a long moment before speaking again. Maybe you don't have to start over, Martha. Maybe you just need to take back what's already yours. Martha blinked. What are you saying? Sarah leaned forward. I'm saying Lisa stole your business, but she didn't steal your talent. She doesn't have your vision, your reputation, your experience. She may have the company name, but you? You have the brand. A thought flickered in the back of Martha's mind, faint but persistent. Lisa had underestimated her. That was her first mistake. Her second? Thinking this was over. Martha didn't sleep that night. The moment Sarah planted the idea in her mind, it grew, taking root in the places grief and betrayal had left hollow. Lisa had stolen her company, but Sarah was right, she hadn't stolen her. By dawn, Martha had a plan. She dug through old notebooks, pulled out forgotten business sketches, and scribbled ideas furiously on sticky notes that littered her kitchen counter. If Lisa thought she could erase her mother's legacy with a fancy press release, she was wrong. By 8 a.m., she was sitting across from her lawyer, Michael Carter, who had represented her through every major deal at Reynolds and Company. He sighed heavily, scanning the paperwork she'd brought in. Martha, I won't lie to you, Lisa didn't do anything illegal. She played this smart. Your shares were legally transferred, and the buyout terms were airtight. You signed them. Martha clenched her jaw. I didn't know I was signing away my own company. I know, Michael said gently. But in the eyes of the law, ignorance doesn't change the outcome. Martha exhaled sharply, pressing her fingers against her temple. Then what's my move? Michael leaned back in his chair. You can sue for breach of fiduciary duty, but that's a long, ugly battle. Even if you win, you'll only get damages, not your company back. Martha shook her head. I don't want to waste years fighting in court. I want to win. Michael studied her carefully. Define win. She met his gaze, her voice steady. I don't need the company name. I don't need the headquarters. But I do need my reputation. And I need Lisa to understand that she made the biggest mistake of her life. Michael's lips curled into a slow, approving smile. Then we don't fight her in court. We fight her in the market. Martha sat up straighter. Think about it, Michael continued. Reynolds and Company isn't just a company, it's a brand that customers trust. And they don't trust Lisa. They trust you. So, if you launch something new, something better, where do you think your clients will go? Martha's heart pounded. A rival brand. A direct competitor. Lisa had taken her company. Now, Martha would bury hers. Michael, she said, leaning forward, I need you to find me a loophole, any loophole, that lets me use my own name in business again. Michael grinned. Now that, I can do. By the afternoon, she was back at Sarah's, laying out her plan. Sarah listened, nodding with approval. You're going to need a team. A good one. I know, Martha said. I need people who know the industry, people who actually understand what makes Reynolds and Company successful. Sarah smirked. You mean the employees Lisa fired after the buyout? Martha's stomach twisted at the thought. Lisa hadn't just stolen the company, she had gutted it. After taking full control, she had slashed costs, let go of loyal employees, and replaced them with younger, cheaper hires. And now, those people, the ones who had built Reynolds and Company from the ground up, were out of work. Martha picked up her phone. It was time to remind them who they had built it for. Martha sat in her car outside a small cafe on the outskirts of town, watching as former employees of Reynolds and Company trickled in. Some looked wary, others curious, but all of them had one thing in common, the sting of betrayal. She had spent the past week making calls, meeting with old colleagues, and tracking down the most talented people Lisa had tossed aside. And now, they were all here. The cafe was buzzing with conversation when she walked in. A hush fell over the room as the group turned to face her. A woman in her early 50s, Nora Wallace, one of Martha's oldest and most loyal designers, crossed her arms. Martha, I respect you. But what are we doing here? Lisa owns Reynolds and Company. We're out. Martha stepped forward, her voice steady. She owns the name, not the talent. And last I checked, that's what really made Reynolds and Company great. Murmurs spread through the crowd. A younger man, Kevin, who had worked in digital marketing, spoke up. Lisa slashed our innovation budget. She's already pushing out second-rate collections just to maximize profit. The brand is tanking, and she doesn't even see it. Martha smiled. Then we don't need to destroy Reynolds and Company. Lisa is doing that herself. Nora leaned forward. You want to start over? I want to build something better, Martha said. A brand that values experience, that understands real craftsmanship. Lisa is chasing cheap, trendy, disposable fashion. We'll create timeless, elegant, high-quality designs. And we'll make sure the world knows who's behind it. Silence settled over the group, heavy with consideration. Then, Nora grinned. Lisa took everything from us. Let's show her what a real fashion house looks like. A spark ignited in the room. Kevin leaned in. What's the name? Martha hesitated. Legally, Lisa owned Reynolds and Company. She had spent years building that name. But Lisa had also stolen it. She didn't need the past. She needed the future. Gray Studios. A murmur of approval rippled through the group. Sarah, who had been watching from the side, leaned over. That's your maiden name. Martha nodded. Reynolds and Company is Lisa's legacy now. This is mine. And just like that, the rebellion was born. Martha had forgotten what exhilaration felt like. For years, Reynolds and Company had been her life, her dream. But now, standing in a small, sunlit loft space with fabric swatches spread across a makeshift work table and the hum of sewing machines filling the air, she realized something. This felt better. Gray Studios was hers. Not a hand-me-down, not a brand built on someone else's terms, but something she was crafting from the ground up. Nora walked in, tossing a folder onto the table. You're going to want to see this. Martha flipped it open. It was a financial report, a breakdown of Reynolds and Company's recent struggles. Sales had plummeted. Lisa had slashed costs to the bone, replacing premium materials with mass-produced alternatives. The new collection had flopped, and buyers weren't impressed. She's burning it to the ground, Kevin muttered, looking over her shoulder. Good, Martha said. We don't even have to compete with her. We just have to be better. Sarah, who had been working on a digital campaign, looked up from her laptop. We just hit 10,000 pre-orders. Martha's breath caught. It had started as a whisper, a quiet rebellion in the fashion world. But their designs, their story, had resonated. They weren't just selling clothes. They were selling redemption. Nora grinned. I guess the industry wasn't as ready to throw us away as Lisa thought. Martha exhaled a slow, satisfied breath. No, they weren't. She ran her fingers along the stitched-in label of one of their new designs. M. Gray Studios. It wasn't just a name. It was a warning. To every company that had ever discarded experience. To every daughter who had ever underestimated a mother. M. Gray Studios wasn't just rising. They were coming for everything. The invitation arrived in a crisp white envelope, sealed with the signature gold emblem of Reynolds and Company. Martha let out a small laugh as she ran her fingers over the embossed lettering. Annual Industry Gala. Hosted by Reynolds and Company. Celebrating innovation in fashion. Innovation? That was ironic. Lisa had spent the last year gutting Reynolds and Company, stripping away everything that had once made it special. The backlash had been swift and unforgiving. Reviews slammed the new collections as soulless, and longtime clients had walked away. Meanwhile, M. Gray Studios had been thriving. It wasn't just the designs, it was the message behind them. Wearers weren't just buying luxury fashion. They were buying resilience. You going? Nora asked, sipping her coffee as she scrolled through their latest sales report. Oh, absolutely, Martha said, a smirk curling at her lips. Lisa had made it clear when she pushed her mother out, there was no room for the past in her future. Martha was about to show her just how wrong she was. The gala was held in a grand ballroom with chandeliers dripping in crystal, the scent of champagne and expensive perfume heavy in the air. Martha stepped through the entrance, dressed in one of her own signature designs, a sleek, charcoal gray gown with intricate stitching along the sleeves, subtle but deliberate. If you looked closely enough, you'd see the embroidered names of every woman over 50 who had contributed to her company's revival. A walking statement. Eyes turned. Murmurs spread. Lisa was at the center of it all, basking in the glow of the event, champagne in hand, dressed in one of her designs, if you could still call it that. When she spotted Martha, her face froze for just a fraction of a second. Then, she smiled. Mother, Lisa said, voice warm, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. Didn't expect to see you here. Didn't you? Martha replied smoothly, taking a slow sip of her champagne. Lisa's lips pressed together. I heard you started something. Martha gave a small shrug. Oh, you know. Just a little thing. M. Gray Studios. The name landed like a grenade in the conversation. Several industry figures nearby turned their heads. Martha watched, amused, as Lisa's grip on her glass tightened. I have to say, Martha continued, voice silky smooth, you've done something truly remarkable with Reynolds and Company. Lisa straightened her shoulders. Thank you. Yes, Martha nodded. It's hard to make an empire collapse this quickly. The air crackled between them. For the first time that night, Lisa looked nervous. Martha leaned in just slightly. You should enjoy this party, sweetheart. It might be your last one hosting. Lisa's expression flickered, just for a second, but Martha caught it. She wasn't winning anymore. Then, almost on cue, a voice cut through the hum of the crowd. Lisa, darling, a word? It was Veronica Hayes. Lisa's biggest investor. And she did not look pleased. Martha took a slow sip of her champagne and stepped back, watching Lisa stiffen under the woman's glare. The night had only just begun. Lisa sat alone in her office, the sleek glass walls now closing in on her like a cage. The silence was deafening. Just hours ago, the board had called an emergency meeting. Just hours ago, she had walked in confident, thinking she could smooth over the recent scandals, brush off the lawsuits, and regain control. But she had been wrong. They voted her out. Not just out of the CEO chair, out of Reynolds and Company entirely. The company that bore her name, the empire she had clung to, was slipping through her fingers. And the worst part? It wasn't an enemy who had orchestrated her downfall. It wasn't some ruthless competitor. It was her own mother. Lisa clenched her jaw, the humiliation burning through her like acid. She had seen the headlines flood the news cycle. Whistleblower exposes Reynolds and Company. Financial fraud, insider report confirms. Reynolds and Company faces lawsuits over illegal firing practices. Ex-CEO Lisa Reynolds under investigation, will she be held accountable? The reports were damning, each one detailing how she had manipulated the company's finances, cut corners on product quality, and mistreated long-term employees. The very people she had dismissed as too old and outdated were the ones who had taken her down. A knock at the door. Lisa didn't answer, but the door opened anyway. Martha Reynolds stepped inside, her presence as commanding as ever. But this wasn't the mother Lisa had once known, the one who used to soften, the one who forgave too easily. This was the woman who had been betrayed, rebuilt herself, and emerged stronger. Lisa scoffed, leaning back in her chair. Come to gloat? Martha studied her daughter for a long moment. No, she said, her voice calm. I came to see if there was anything left of the girl I raised. Lisa let out a bitter laugh. The girl you raised? You mean the girl you abandoned for a business? The girl who learned that power was the only thing that mattered? Martha's jaw tightened. Power without integrity is meaningless, Lisa. And what you did, you destroyed everything I built. I built this too. Lisa shot back, standing up, her hands slamming against the desk. I made this company bigger than you ever could. You were stuck in your ways, refusing to change. I did what was necessary to survive. Martha shook her head. No, you did what was easiest. You took shortcuts. You burned bridges. You betrayed the people who trusted you. Lisa's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she masked it with a smirk. And what now? You think I'll come crawling back to you? That you can fix me? Martha exhaled, a deep weariness settling in. No, Lisa. You made your choices. She placed a single envelope on the desk. The lawsuits will take years to settle. The SEC is investigating your financial records. You'll need a good lawyer. Lisa snatched the envelope, tearing it open. A check. Her mother was giving her money. Not enough to rebuild, not enough to restart, just enough to survive. Lisa's hands trembled. What is this? Pity? Martha shook her head. No. It's me saying that despite everything, I still want you to have a chance to be better. Lisa swallowed hard. For the first time, her arrogance cracked. And if I don't take it? Martha met her gaze with quiet steel. Then you'll be exactly what they say you are. A beat of silence stretched between them. Lisa looked down at the check, then back at her mother. For the first time in years, she didn't have a clever response. Martha turned to leave, pausing at the door. I won't be there to pick up the pieces, Lisa. This time, whatever happens next, it's on you. And with that, she was gone. Lisa stood in the empty office, staring at the check in her hand. For the first time in her life, she was truly alone. Months later, in a boutique studio filled with warmth and life, Martha stood in front of a room full of women over 50, designers, chemists, marketers, all of them overlooked by corporations, all of them now part of something bigger. Grey Studios was thriving, not just as a brand, but as a movement. They weren't just making beauty products. They were redefining beauty itself, showing the world that experience, wisdom, and age were assets, not liabilities. And as Martha looked around at the women who had once been cast aside, she knew, this was the legacy she was meant to leave behind. She had lost a company. She had lost a daughter. But she had gained something far greater. She had gained herself. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. But Martha's journey is a testament to resilience, proving that even after betrayal, reinvention is always possible. She didn't let heartbreak define her, she used it as fuel to rebuild, to create something even stronger than before. Her story reminds us that setbacks aren't the end, they are simply the beginning of a new chapter. What do you think about Martha's decision? Do you believe Lisa deserves forgiveness, or was Martha right to walk away and start fresh? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, comment 2 below, and if you didn't, comment 7, we want to hear your honest opinions. And if you love powerful, real-life stories of resilience and second chances, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to EN True Tales. Your support helps bring more inspiring stories to life every day. See you in the next one.